Mankind likes to believe that there are no monsters, that we have always ruled the world. It is not so. It's called The Hide Behind. Jim leaned back in his chair, beer in hand. Jim was a heavy-set man with a bushy red beard. He wore jeans and flannel. Beady eyes and a jutting forehead made him look like a Neanderthal, but Tom knew better. Jim wrote children's books for a living. The Hide Behind? Chester lifted an eyebrow. Chester was also in flannel. All of them were. Chester was tall and skinny with a blonde ponytail and a scraggly goatee. He was a mechanic by trade and a bit of a gun nut. That's a dumb name. Of course it is, said Jim. A bunch of drunk lumberjacks came up with it. They call it the Hide Behind because it was so quick no one could get a look at the thing. They figured it was hiding behind trees. If no one ever saw one, how did they know it was hiding behind trees? Asked Frank. Frank looked like a lumberjack himself, or maybe a dwarf. He was short and stocky with huge shoulders and thick wrists and a jaw like a lantern. His hair and beard were black and neatly trimmed. Frank didn't have a job. He'd been born rich. He was a nice enough guy that Tom usually didn't hold it against him. They didn't know, said Jim. Not really. All they knew was lumberjacks kept disappearing. Usually at night. They figured it had been some sneaky predator. So, what? Asked Tom. They just assumed there was a magic invisible bear or something? Tom was the most normal looking of the bunch. He was average height and reasonably fit. Not ugly, but not particularly handsome either. Tom had brown hair and brown eyes. He made his living as a desk worker, a well-paid desk worker. But still, basically, Big Jim confirmed, 19th century lumberjacks weren't exactly known for their smarts. Something was killing them off, and they couldn't find a sign of what it was. They figured a magic monster was the simplest answer. He took a swig of beer. They weren't the first people around here to come to that conclusion. Someone else believed in magic tree hiding bears? Chester sounded dubious. No one thought it was bears, said Jim. He leaned forward, pointing at Chester with his beer bottle. You ever hear of the Wendigo? A Wendigo? Chester scoffed and rolled his eyes. That's like asking if I know what a vampire is. I've got a TV, Jim. Okay, fair point, Big Jim conceded. But do you know the lore? The real lore, I mean. It's a fictional monster that eats people, Frank cut in. Regular folk get turned into one if they go around being cannibals. They're also Canadian, Chester added. I read a comic book where Wolverine fought one. They're not just in Canada, Jim told him. Stories of the Wendigo popped up in America, too, especially around the Great Lakes area. Hell, there are stories about this very mountain if you ask the folks on the reservation. The mountain was one of the many peaks that made up the Appalachians. It was prime elk country, and Frank owned a big chunk of the land. He'd had a hunting lodge built, and the four friends gathered there every year for a week of hunting and beer. It was even odds whether anyone would bag anything, but it was always a good time. I thought the natives don't talk about stuff like that, said Tom. They're not supposed to. Jim shrugged. I'd been buying drinks and asking around all year. I didn't learn much. Why are you asking around about Wendigos? Asked Frank. I thought you wrote kids' books. Children's stories pay the bills, said Jim, but I've been thinking about branching out. I wanted to do a book on local legends. Maybe see how they all string together. Cool idea, said Frank. He frowned. Why don't the natives like to talk about it? Superstition, mostly, Jim explained. They think talking about the Wendigo is bad luck at best. At worst, they think they'll get its attention. They really think stuff like that's real? Chester snorted. And it'll show up if you talk about it? Basically, yeah, Jim confirmed. I don't imagine everyone believes, but it's a part of their tradition not to talk about it. I got a couple drunks talking once, and the rest of the bar threw me out. They said asking about such things is a good way to get eaten. Well, let's hope they're wrong, said Frank. seeing as how we're talking about it on a mountain that supposedly had one of these things. Relax, Frank, said Jim. It's a ghost story. I wish it wasn't, said Chester. He slapped the pistol on his belt. I'd kick its ass. Sure you would, Chester, Tom snorted. Chester talked a big game, and he liked to fight, especially when he'd been drinking. The problem was he wasn't good at it. Tom had watched him get his butt kicked more than once. Damned right I would, Chester grinned. He raised his voice. You hear that, Mr. Wendigo? Come out and play. Chester Benning's going to stick his foot in your ass. The friends spent a little more time drinking and catching up. It was their first day at the lodge, and they'd spent most of it getting the place set up. The lodge was styled like a log cabin, but it had all of the amenities. Sort of. As long as the generator was running. There was no call reception or internet, but that was all right. Tom liked being able to get away from the wife and the kids for a while and just hang out with the boys. They were debating which movie to stick in the DVD player when the power went out. The lodge had wood stoves, so the place didn't go completely dark. The four of them exchanged muttered curses in the firelight. What the hell? Said Jim. Did we forget to gas up the generator again? No, I filled it, Tom assured him. I don't hear it running, Jim pointed out. I filled it, Tom insisted. Frank got out of his chair and pulled an electric lantern off a hook on the wall. He turned it on. I got more flashlights in the kitchen, said Frank. Let's go take a look. By unspoken agreement, everyone grabbed a gun. The mountain they were on wasn't just full of elk. There were bears, too, and badgers, which were worse. Tom didn't expect any real trouble, but they were 3 hours from the nearest town and there was no cell service. It was better safe than sorry. A blast of cold slapped Tom in the face when Frank opened the door. The friends stepped out. There was half a foot of snow on the ground, with more falling lazily from the sky. A blob of pale light could be seen where the clouds obscured the moon. Tom observed a pair of pickup trucks, a snow-covered dirt road, and a whole lot of trees. Footprints had been trampled around the lodge, but they all belonged to Tom and his friends. He didn't see anything to worry about. The four of them trudged down around the back of the cabin. The generator was there, a big blocky thing painted green. 5-gallon jugs of diesel fuel sat in a little open shack next to it. Chester checked the wires first. Then he checked the gas tank. It was mostly full. He spent another minute tinkering while the other three stood around. Then he tried to switch the generator on. It started no problem. It's weird, said the mechanic. There ain't nothing wrong with the generator. It's like someone just turned it off. Huh, Frank frowned. Some kind of glitch, maybe? It's pretty old. Could be, Chester sounded dubious. But these things are built to be reliable. We've never had a problem before. Come out and play! The voice sounded like Chester, but it wasn't coming from him. It came from behind them, from the trees. Tom whirled around. He saw it. A figure, gray. So skinny it might as well be a skeleton. A little under 6 feet tall. It was standing about 30 feet away from them. 2 circles of green light glowed in the shadow of its face. Eyes. The sight of it shot a jolt of adrenaline up Tom's legs. He dropped his flashlight, fumbling to bring his rifle up to his shoulder. He heard the others shouting and bringing up their own weapons. The figure casually turned and walked behind a tree. It wasn't a big tree. Tom waited for it to appear on the other side. It didn't. It was gone. What the hell was that? Frank demanded. Did you see that? We all saw, said Tom. Maybe we should go look, Jim suggested. See if it left any tracks. Screw that, said Chester. I say we go back inside and lock the door. I'll do you one better, said Tom. I say we should leave now. Too dangerous, said Jim. That dirt track's hard enough to navigate in the daylight. I don't want to wreck one of the trucks and get us all stuck here. Plus, it's a slow drive, said Frank. We'd be sitting ducks. He had his own rifle raised, staring out into the trees. You heard what it said, right? Come out and play? It sounded like Chester, Tom pointed out. Why are we still standing here like idiots? Chester demanded. We need to get inside. They walked back around the lodge. Tom tried to point his rifle in every direction. There was nothing to see, just trees and falling snow. The door to the lodge was open. Light spilled out into the night. It looked warm, inviting, safe. There was just one problem. "Stop!" Tom hissed. "Why?" Frank hissed back. "Do you see something?" "We didn't leave the door open," said Jim. He tightened his grip on his rifle. "Shit," said Chester. "You think it's still in there?" "I don't want to find out," said Tom. "Maybe we should get in the trucks after all." "I already told you it's a bad idea," said Jim. "It's a better idea than staying here," Tom argued. Guys?" Frank was staring at one of the pickups. "I don't think we're going anywhere." Frank pointed. Tom looked. Were the trucks sitting lower than they should? They were. Tom squinted for a moment, confused. Then he realized. It was the tires. The tires were all flat. Chester cursed. "It slashed the tires. The son of a bitch slashed my tires." "Maybe we could drive out anyway?" Tom said hopefully. "Not a chance," said Jim. "That dirt road is covered in holes and big rocks. We'd tear the bottom out of the trucks." "Not to mention what it would do to the suspension," said Chester. His face darkened. He turned to point his rifle at the doorway. "You know what? I hope that bastard's in there." "I'm kind of hoping he isn't," Jim drawled. "I'm going to blow his goddamn head off," Chester continued. "He touched my truck. No one touches my truck." He raised his voice to a shout. "You hear me, you skinny prick? You're dead. You're dead. You hear me?" "God damn it, Chester," Frank chided. "Stop yelling at the thing. This might not be happening if you'd kept your damn mouth shut earlier." "Bullshit," Chester shot back. "Whatever that thing is, there's no way it heard me unless it was already close. Ain't none of this my fault." He took another glance around the woods, then started for the lodge door with his rifle at the ready. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta see if that prick's in the lodge. I owe him a lead sandwich." Chester stalked forward. He'd taken 3 steps before the others started to follow. Tom swallowed. He could hear his heart pounding in his ears as they closed in on the door. The others all had their eyes glued to it. Tom wasn't sure that was a good thing. Whatever the creature was, it was smart. It had turned off the generator, not wrecked or chewed up, turned off, like a person would. Then it slashed all their tires. Everything it had done so far was deliberate. It had a plan. Why would a monster with a plan trap itself in the lodge? The cabin only had one door. Tom and his friends were alert, and they had guns. Waiting for them inside was a good way to get shot. Maybe it wasn't afraid of bullets? More to the point, why leave the door open? If the thing could work a generator, it certainly knew how to close a door. Leaving it open just told Tom there might be something in there. It didn't make sense. Unless... "Wait!" Tom barked. "It's a trick!" Frank and Jim froze. Chester kept going. He was almost at the doorway. The open door was a distraction. It had to be. Tom swiveled around, but he didn't see anything in the trees. He turned back to the lodge. Chester was leaning into the doorway, rifle pointed inside. Tom looked up. Glowing green eyes, looking down from the top of the lodge. "The roof!" Tom shouted. He snapped his rifle up. He squeezed the trigger. The crack of the gunshot was deafening. It was also useless. The creature had already dropped off the roof. It landed next to Chester. The thing was even uglier up close. It had open nostrils where its nose should be. Ragged gray lips were peeled back, revealing a mouth full of sharp yellow teeth. Its body was covered in sickly gray skin pulled tight over thin bones. Its skeletal fingers ended in sharp black claws. The Wendigo landed without a sound. It snatched Chester by the flannel jacket, jerking him off the ground with hideous strength. Tom brought his rifle around to try to shoot the thing. He was too slow. The creature streaked back into the trees. It was so fast. How was it so fast? Chester screamed as he was carried off. Tom heard the others shouting. He ignored them, putting the Wendigo in his crosshairs. He aimed for the lower back of the running monster. The rifle bucked against his shoulder. The shot felt right, but Tom couldn't tell if he scored a hit. The creature kept running with a screaming Chester held high. Tom sighted in again, but the Wendigo vanished into the trees. "It's got Chester!" Frank shouted. He broke into a sprint. "After it!" The three friends ran after the thing. They followed the screams for about 30 seconds. They heard gunshots. The screams got louder. Then they stopped. "It's no good," Jim huffed. He stumbled to a halt. "I think Chester's dead." Chester was dead? Tom stared into the woods. Chester couldn't be dead. "We don't know that." "He's dead, Tom," Jim panted for a moment. "Even if he's not, we've got no way to follow him. Look." Jim pointed at the snow. "That thing didn't leave any tracks. We're not going to find it." "Jim's right," said Frank. He cursed. We'd better get back to the lodge." "Chester's not dead," Tom said stubbornly. "Maybe not," said Frank. Tom could tell he didn't believe it. "But we're not going to find him stumbling around in the dark with no tracks. We need to get indoors before that thing comes back." "Indoors?" Tom shook his head. "You really think that'll help?" "Hell if I know," Frank admitted. "If nothing else, it won't be able to sneak up on us." The three trudged back to the cabin. The door was still open. It didn't look so inviting anymore. Frank led the way inside, guns swerving whichever way he looked. The living room was empty. Jim closed the door and locked it. The three of them checked the rest of the lodge. They didn't find anything. They reconvened in the living room. Tom thought about grabbing another beer. He could really use one right now. He decided against it. His reflexes were already slower than they should be. If he'd been sober, maybe he would have been fast enough to save Chester. "All right, Jim," said Frank. "Wendigos. What do you know?" "Not much," Jim admitted. "They're what happens when evil spirits takes over a man. The spirit makes him hungry, violent. They eat people. Wendigos don't get full no matter how much they eat. They're sneaky and vicious and totally evil." "What else?" asked Frank. "How do we kill it?" "I don't know," said Jim. "What do you mean you don't know?" Frank demanded. "You've been studying up on this, right?" "I told you," said Jim. "The natives don't like to talk about it. I didn't learn much. I didn't hear any stories about anyone killing a Wendigo. The consensus seemed to be to keep away from the damn things and try not to get their attention." "Well, that ship sure as hell sailed," said Frank. "Do they have a weakness? Anything?" "I don't know," said Jim. "I don't know anything, man. They're supposed to be a fairy tale." "Maybe it won't come back?" Tom said hopefully. The other two looked at Tom like he was an idiot. Tom didn't blame them. The idea sounded stupid to him, too. Tom continued anyway. "Chester called it out. It took Chester. Maybe that's the end of it." "That's not how it works, Tom," said Jim. "I didn't learn much, but what little I know tells me Wendigos don't stop. Their hunger is never satisfied, and they're the kind of evil that makes the devil look like a harmless prankster. The thing's gonna come for us. It's gonna come for us soon." "So what are we gonna do?" Tom demanded. "I shot it already, I'm pretty sure. The bullets didn't do nothing." "Then we'll just have to shoot it more," Frank decided. He opened the tool closet next to the kitchen and pulled out a wood splitting axe. "Then we'll chop the son of a bitch into pieces and burn those pieces to ash. For Chester." "For Chester," Jim agreed. He went to the kitchen and came back with a meat cleaver. He tucked it into the back of his belt. Tom hesitated. He didn't want Chester to be dead. He let out a breath. "To hell with it. Let's get the son of a—" He trailed off. Someone was jiggling the door handle. Pounding came next. Tom heard Chester's voice. "Hey! It's me! Open the door!" "Chester?" Frank sounded doubtful. He and Jim exchanged a look. "No, it's the Easter Bunny!" Chester yelled. "Of course it's me." "How do you get away?" asked Jim. Frank pointed at the window. Jim nodded and picked up his shotgun. "Get away?" Chester let out a crazed laugh. "I shot the bastard. I told you I'd kick his ass." The voice hesitated. "I don't think he's dead, though. I'd really appreciate not being left outside." "Yeah?" said Frank. He nodded at Jim and pulled out a pistol and a flashlight. "Come to the window. Let us see your face." "Come on, guys," said Chester. "We don't have time to screw around. That thing could be back any second. Let me in." Tom's blood ran cold. That thing had impersonated Chester's voice before. That's what Frank and Jim were worried about. The real Chester was kind of an ass, but he wasn't dumb. Well, he wasn't that dumb. He'd come to the window, if it was really him. "Show us your face first," Frank insisted. "We gotta make sure it's really you." "Who else would it be, dumbass?" Chester snapped. Tom heard the jangle of keys. "You know what? Never mind. I just remembered. I've got keys." Frank and Jim shared a panicked look. Jim rushed forward, trying to point his shotgun through the window toward the door. Frank turned on the flashlight. A gray hand smashed through the window and grabbed Jim's shotgun. The gun boomed. The hand jerked the shotgun out the window. Jim stumbled forward, barely stopping himself from falling into the broken glass. Frank tried to get a bead on the creature with his pistol, but Jim was in the way. The hand darted back in, snatching Jim by the flannel. It pulled the big man through the window. Jim screamed. "Jim!" Frank shouted. He leaned out the window, emptying the pistol with quick, steady shots. Tom unlocked the door and jerked it open. He saw the Wendigo. It was bigger now. The thing was still rail thin, but it was over 9 feet tall. It held a flailing Jim in one clawed hand. Jim pulled the pistol off his belt and emptied it into the creature. The Wendigo didn't even seem to notice. Tom shot the bastard in the head. The Wendigo paused. It turned to look at him. Burning green eyes bored into Tom. The creature smiled. Tom put a glowing green eye in the crosshairs. He squeezed the trigger. The gun bucked. The Wendigo howled. It sounded like a man. Tom kept shooting until his rifle ran dry. Big Jim pulled the meat cleaver from the back of his belt. He hacked at the arm holding him. The creature's other hand snatched his wrist. A sharp tug tore the man's arm off. Jim screamed louder. The Wendigo stuffed the arm into its mouth. It bit off a big chunk. The creature smiled at Tom again. Its ruined eye healed and flared into life. Tom hurried to reload. Frank opened up with a rifle. The Wendigo laughed and took another bite of Jim's arm and disappeared with him into the trees. "Jim!" Frank hollered again. There were tears in his eyes. He hefted the woodcutter's axe, preparing to run after his friend. Tom caught his shoulder. "Frank, no!" Tom shouted. "We can save him!" Frank shouted back. "We can't," Tom told him. "His arm's ripped off. He'll bleed out even if we kill the thing. We have to go." "Go?" said Frank. Jim's screams got more high-pitched. Then they stopped. "We have to go," Tom repeated. He picked up Jim's fallen shotgun. "I shot it. You shot it. Jim shot it. None of it worked. We can't stop that thing. It's got keys to the lodge, and I don't think a door's enough to stop it anyway. We either get out of here now, or it eats us." "There's gotta be a way," said Frank. He looked lost. "There's gotta. It ate our friends, Tom." "I know." Tom swallowed a lump in his throat. Any hope he had about Chester being alive had been thoroughly dashed. Chester was dead, and so was Jim. It was just him and Frank now. "I know." He shook his head. "We can come back later, after we learn some stuff. We can come back and kill it. But right now, we have to go." For a second, Tom thought Frank was going to punch him. Then Frank nodded. Yeah, all right. We'll come back. We'll come back and kill it." The two of them piled into Frank's truck. It was a big black Toyota Tacoma with a lift kit. Frank put it in gear and started it up. The engine rumbled to life. They started down the snow-covered dirt road. It was a rough ride. All the tires were flat. They flopped and jolted. Tom wasn't sure they'd make it off the mountain before something broke. The thought made his pulse pound even harder. The dirt track they were going down was barely a road. It was full of holes and ruts and big rocks. The lift kit would help, but there was a good chance the Tacoma would bottom out. If a big rock tore the bottom out of the truck, they were dead. If the suspension gave out, they were dead. Frank knew that, but he didn't seem to care. He tore down the road as fast as the Tacoma would take him. Tom didn't like it, but he didn't ask him to slow down. Yeah, they were dead if they wrecked, or if the truck broke, but it was a risk they had to take. They couldn't fight the Wendigo. Outrunning the thing was their only chance. For 12 tense minutes, Tom saw nothing but trees and snow and bouncing headlights. He waffled back and forth between terror and the faint hope that they might actually make it out of here. Then the Wendigo came back. It didn't make a sound. It was so fast Tom barely saw it. A huge figure streaked out of the trees. It slammed into the side of the truck. The truck flipped up on its side, skidding along the snow. It smashed into a tree with a booming crunch. Tom hadn't had time to scream, let alone aim his shotgun. The driver's side door was ripped away with a squeal of tearing metal. Frank let out a shout of defiance. A hand bigger than Frank's whole chest clamped over him. Another hand tore off his seatbelt. The Wendigo pulled Frank out of the truck. Tom heard screaming and gunfire. He slumped for a moment. It was over. Frank was going to die. Tom would be next. His hands tightened on the useless shotgun. No. Tom's jaw clenched. No. A tiny spark of anger worked its way through Tom's fear. It wasn't over. Not yet. Guns hadn't killed the monster, but they did hurt it. Tom could still fight. He might even save Frank if he acted fast enough. It took several precious seconds to undo his seatbelt. Tom scrambled to his feet, clutching the shotgun as he rose. When his head cleared the place that used to be the driver's side door, he saw Frank. The Wendigo was holding him. The creature was over 12 feet tall now. It was still bone-thin. Frank was stabbing furiously at the Wendigo's hand. His pistol was missing. Tom was pretty sure the gun was empty anyway. Tom's wasn't. He aimed for the monster's face. The shotgun boomed. The buckshot blew off the top of the head that was nearly 2 feet wide. One enormous hand snapped out, ripping the shotgun out of Tom's hands. The monster tossed it away. It bit off one of Frank's feet. Frank howled, still stabbing. The Wendigo ignored the man with the knife. Its huge, slender hand snaked around the back of Tom's head. The creature grinned down at him. In Tom's own voice, it said, "We'll come back and kill it." The Wendigo walked casually back into the trees. It gnawed on Tom's last friend as it went.